So, my name's Seb Mayfield, and I'm here to talk to Sue Sheehan, who I first met 10 years ago this year, when I was setting up Food Up Front community food network in Wandsworth and Lambeth, and we're in Lambeth now. And I don't think I've probably spoken to you for 7-8 years, probably, maybe. Even though we've both been in and around London and doing stuff to do with food, and yet we haven't gone across paths too much. So, seeing as it was 10 years, I thought it was a good opportunity to come back and talk to you, and we've both still been involved with food, so good to see what's going on. Maybe you could just say a bit about what it is that you're involved with, or what you have been involved with, in a nutshell over that last 10 years. Okay. How you got started and where you are now, maybe that's a good...
Yeah. Okay, so 10 years ago I was just starting out on my journey into food, really. And I was really interested in what people could do for themselves, rather than sort of lobbying, campaigning other people to do things, and got involved with the Transition Town movement, and I started doing lots of things for myself. Then the council saw what I was doing, and they thought it was really inspirational, and they wanted to get more of that type of activity going, so I ended up working for the council to do just that through a Green Champions programme, we called it. Then the council saw that was really cool, and they developed ideas around becoming a cooperative council and working more cooperatively. And so I got a lot more involved in sort of more core policy work, and we took some of that food work to turn it into policy work. We wrote a food strategy, set up a Lambeth Food Partnership, set up a network of food growing people, Incredible Edible Lambeth. And I just left the council last year, because I felt I'd done what I could within the council. Obviously things are difficult in the local authorities at the moment with all the cuts. But I felt I could do more outside of the council. So I've gone freelance. I'm focusing on Incredible Edible. So I'm now a director of Incredible Edible nationally, as well as in Lambeth, and really fundraising to develop the activity more and more. So we've got so many food growing projects in the area. We've got so many other types of food activism going on, food waste projects, redistributing surplus food, healthy food, cooking initiatives, small businesses, local food businesses, we've got lots of those. So there's a real passion and energy, but it's really trying to make it more impactful.
Yeah, absolutely. And first, I was wondering if you could just explain what Incredible Edible is to people who might not know much about that.
So Incredible Edible is a national movement, and actually it's international as well. It's founded in Todmorden in Yorkshire. And actually when we started Incredible Edible Lambeth, Incredible Edible Todmorden had only been going for a year or two, and we literally just copied them. Right. So there were clearly some principles underlying the whole Incredible Edible thing, but as soon as I started using the words Incredible Edible Lambeth, people really liked it and thought, there's something in this. Even though we weren't really very specific about what it was. Now we're a lot clearer that it is about bringing together people who want to do things around food, encouraging people to do stuff for themselves, and making the links with the wider sort of statutory frameworks, that making sure that its impact on health is appreciated, and that it's sustainable.
Okay.
So,
and what I'm interested in is what you were saying about the fact that your work in Lambeth and the developments that Lambeth Council went through in terms of its focus and energy in terms of food started off in the grassroots, but worked its way up to policy change and the policy level. And I was just wondering if you could say something about that, about kind of why it was so important that it started off in the grassroots and started off with people, because you were saying how it's about people kind of doing it for themselves, or that's what you were really interested in, and why that kind of bottom-up approach is so important.
Yeah, you do need both, and I think there's still a lot of work to be done to get the two to meet. But when there's so much more sustainable. Things are so much more sustainable when they are grassroots, when you don't need a lot of funding to get things going, when people want to do stuff for themselves, and they're quite infectious that way as well. So one project will inspire another, and I think there came a point where the council just couldn't not take notice. Also, I was inside the council, but we were having to get some change. So it was quite difficult for people on housing estates, for example, to start their own food growing project on an estate, to get the permissions that they needed. Sometimes the council just sort of had to get out of the way a little bit and not worry about things. And it's still easier in Lambeth, I think, to start a food growing project on council land than it is in a lot of other areas.
Yeah, I think it's really good. Yeah.
But so there's all sorts of different types of land. So getting access to the land was a big issue right at the very beginning, but you really needed the people to want it in the first place. There's no point in getting the access and saying, yes, okay, we'll be very permissive and we'll allow all these things to happen and we'll support it if it's not what people want.
So how has the process been set up that makes it easier for people to be able to use council-owned land for food production per se?
Yeah, it is a cultural thing rather than a
Right.
process thing. So we started off having to get sort of license agreements for people to start food growing projects on housing land particularly. But in the end, they weren't really used very much.
Right. Is that because people weren't interested enough, or
people weren't interested, but also the housing officers started to realise that the problems that they'd imagined that they wanted a license agreement for weren't really materialising. So
Right.
they thought that people would think, actually,
interesting.
the people might think they own that piece of land, or they
Yeah.
might control it in some kind of way, and it might no longer be shared. But people don't seem to work like
That's
that.
a surprise, isn't it?
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
who just wanted to grow some stuff and
Yeah.
just wanted to come together and grow some stuff didn't actually want to take on the ownership of
Yeah.
the land themselves. Yeah.
No.
And I suppose it's that what I've found with local authorities in that respect is it's just whether they're willing to take on that element of risk and how much
Yeah.
risk they're willing to take on and manage, I suppose, because there could be that danger, but actually there usually isn't, I guess.
There was also a lot of concern about soil contamination.
Right, yeah.
And we realised that the issue wasn't a licence agreement or anything like that. It was literally just to encourage people to build raised beds and put fresh soil in rather than dig too deep.
Yeah.
So we know that the soil is probably contaminated everywhere around here.
Yeah.
But it's not going to kill you because it hasn't killed anybody yet, and it's there's ways of mitigating.
Yeah, absolutely. So with I noticed that you sort of refer to yourself as a community development specialist as part of what you do, and I was just wondering why, because obviously that isn't just about food, but it very often what I've found is that developing communities, food takes such a central role in that, and quite often it can be the start of a lot of things. I mean, I remember when you were involved in the Food Up Front project, and yes, it was a food growing network, but actually we used to say that it could be anything, because actually it's just about the social cohesion and bringing people together, and it doesn't matter whether it's food, because actually the amount of food that's being grown was fairly small, but it was about bringing people together. So why do you think it is that food is such a core part of community development as a whole?
Whether growing or eating,
Yeah,
or cooking,
I guess
anything.
any
Of course,
of
we all
those
eat,
three
don't
things.
we?
Yeah,
We all
yeah.
eat, so everybody's included automatically. We all have to eat. It's not. You can't say, some people are more interested in it than others, but at the end of the day, we're all interested in it. We all have to eat. But also, it is a social thing. You do come together to eat, and come together to cook and tell stories. There's just so much there with food. I mean, what can I say? Going outside, going outdoors, intergenerational. It's great for the kids, great for older people, it's great for men, it's great for women.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of that whole sort of all the benefits that it has over the last 10 years, if you look back and you think about what you saw as the main challenges then, and you look now and you think about what the challenges are now, do you think they're different? Do you think they're the same? What do you think are the main challenges now in terms of what we need to be doing in the future around the sort of work that you do?
Challenges. I would say one of the biggest changes is that when we started growing food, we were growing it because we thought it was politically the right thing to do, that we needed to reduce food miles, it was an environmental issue. And then we found out that actually, it's only once we started doing it that we found out that we had loads of social benefits, that we got to know one another, and it was a great way, and actually if we knew one another then that could have some environmental benefits because we could share things and swap whatever. So that's been one of the big changes, I think, that people now understand that food growing is more than the environment. And I think that's probably a bit more widely understood, but still not very widely understood. I think that health practitioners, for example, if I take people to and show them a food growing project, they go, wow, this is great, how can it not be helping people's health? But they're still very unaware of what is going on locally. So we've got 200 food growing projects in Lambeth, but a lot of, it's like I constantly have to tell people that they're there, and I do a lot of work just signposting, just telling people that they're there. So I think that we've got a lot of work to do there. That's where I'd like to do more work. It's on that signposting, understanding the benefits, mapping the benefits, making more links, getting the centres, the community gardens used a bit more useful to more people, more impactful, growing a bit more productive. So we didn't really know what to grow either when we first started growing, and now we know what grows well. We grow a lot of things like Japanese salad leaves, which we'd never have thought of in those very early days. And things like the chard, it's the easiest thing to grow, but we didn't know that when we started. So
interesting. And so, I guess sort of to finish off, bringing that back round into the incredible way to work at a national or international level, what can a national organisation like that do to help signpost and raise awareness more about all those things and try and get more people involved?
Yeah, well, part of the reason I got involved with the national network is because there's some amazing people out there that have got a really huge profile, and Pam Warhurst is one of them. And I think she has, she has a lot of gravitas. She can talk to a lot of people at a national level, and that's what we need to do. We need to network at a local level so we can include as many people as possible. I mean, that's one of the real joys of working at a local level, is you go into every little corner of every little estate, and you can, it appeals to everybody, I know that. But I also need to influence, I want that work to be understood and appreciated at a national level, at a policy level as well. I want people to understand the health impacts of all of that. So that's where a national you need to network at multiple levels, because there's all these different levels that influence our food.